We're so glad you're joining us. I'm Alicia. I am the room chair. I am very happy to introduce Mariah Marr and Michelle Sullivan from the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. They said they would be happy to take questions throughout, so if you have a burning question, just raise your hand. We'll get a mic over to you, and we'll also have time for the end, so if you want to wait to the end, that's cool too. All right, thank you. Take it away.
Hi everyone, thank you for all of you who stayed until the last session. I know it's been a long day. I'm Mariah Marr. I come from the Department of Labor and Industry, and specifically today we'll be talking about Apprenticeship Minnesota. My job at the Department of Labor and Industry is a research analysis specialist, and I was hired as part of our research and data analytics team that specifically is a smaller team focused on utilizing tons of resources and data that our department has at its disposal, but hasn't been tapped into enough to be able to be as user-friendly and usable as we wanted it to be. So that was kind of our team's task, and so I'll hand it over to my colleague here.
Hi everyone, welcome. Welcome to our talk, From Raw Data to Actionable Insights, a women-led case study in applied data analytics. I'm Michelle Sullivan, and I am the Business Intelligence Specialist at the Research and Data Analytics team. And as Mariah mentioned, it was a brand new team. We were like one of the first people hired for that team, so we are very excited. We have a lot of exciting things, and this was one of the first projects that we worked on. And it's just a really good example of data collaboration and using technical skills and building something that is user-centered. And yeah, we can go a little bit. Yeah, so we're gonna go over the agenda for today, a little bit of the background and importance of this project, align the goals and how we went over it with the apprenticeship team, the data cleaning and integration process that we went through, how we build our visuals, the challenges, and takeaways and next steps that we have for this project.
Yeah, so getting into a little bit of the focus and area of our study, Apprenticeship Minnesota is a program that is administered by the Department of Labor and Industry. It is actually one of the oldest apprenticeship programs in the US, established in 1939. And it's a really important program because it connects employers, workers, and educators through paid on-the-job training, and it has classroom instruction, but also combines that with key industries such as construction, manufacturing, healthcare, and IT. And then graduates gain nationally recognized credentials, which is a huge career boost for these people, especially in these really in these really key industries. And then also the program overall strengthens Minnesota's workforce and connects educators with lots of real job opportunities. So beyond that, a little bit more about why this specific case study matters. Apprenticeship data offers critical insight into participation, equity, and workforce development trends across Minnesota. So having all of this data at our disposal that had not been fully tapped into, there was a lot of stuff there that provided some critical insights that we hadn't yet explored. The data in this case was spread across multiple systems, so there was a lot of work to be done to gather all of that together, and there was a lot of need for accessible and understandable tools because all of that stuff was spread out and some people, maybe of different technical levels, weren't able to fully understand it at all of those places, so bringing it together was really important in this case. And ultimately, there were some really important metrics that decision makers at multiple levels needed to be aware of, such as, you'll see later, understanding equity gaps in apprenticeship participation. So we had the data, wanted to understand it on like a deeper level by utilizing what was already there. So some of the specific goals of this project were to develop an interactive, user-friendly dashboard that transformed raw data into actionable insights, for both technical and program staff. So like I said, there's a lot of levels of that technical expertise, and there's a lot of questions from people with different levels of that expertise, and they all have all of these questions, so we wanted to build something that was user-friendly for everybody to get the answers to these questions. So one of the other goals specifically for this project to do that is to enhance the data quality and accessibility. And then ultimately to enable data-driven decision-making at all organizational levels through clear visual insights. So that was ultimately our goal. To do that though, to start out, one of the most important things is to start to meet with your stakeholders. So in this case, it was our apprenticeship team and other people who were interested throughout the Department of Labor and Industry. We wanted to define our objectives and align on priorities. So it's really important to figure out what some of your key questions that you want to ask your stakeholders are so you can align on these goals and priorities. So some of the questions we asked were, for example, how is apprenticeship data currently stored, collected, and validated, and where are the gaps? So really understanding what you are looking at with all of this data. The stakeholders sometimes have some of the best insight into what that is. Sometimes there's some things that you look at it and might not understand, but they give you an answer and it just changes your perspective of it. And then you want to ask what metrics matter the most to each stakeholder group. So like I said, we have kind of our main stakeholder group of the actual apprenticeship team, but there's a lot of other people who are interested, and they also have metrics that matter to them. And then understanding what decisions these different people need to make with this data, so that kind of goes into what metrics we end up using, just to kind of make sure that these people, these different stakeholders, are able to answer all of these questions. So ultimately, we want to understand how the dashboard can best support all of these questions and decision makings. And then also understanding what level of interactivity and customization is needed for different users. So making sure that you're making something that is ultimately usable by all technical skill levels. So we get into the actual process of building the dashboard, which is what the visual tool that we decided to build is. So we have data collection, cleaning, structuring, and visualization. So first step is collecting the data. We pulled together data from multiple sources. Like I said, it was in different areas. We brought those together, and we really just tried to figure out what we were looking at. So you want to understand the data. That can include looking at it, talking with the owners, and then finding commonality among your different sources. So ultimately, there's a goal to bring everything into one consistent workspace to make it really easy to create those visuals that can ultimately answer those questions. So there's the cleaning, combining, and preparing the data in Excel stage, which is a super fun stage. So I was one of the first people hired to the new team that I described, with Michelle coming very shortly after. And my expertise before that had come from Excel. My job was primarily using Excel, and that's what I felt most comfortable in. And so I said, yep, let's use Excel. And so I brought all of the data from all these different sources into Excel, looked at it, cleaned it, just really understood it, found duplicates, all of that fun cleaning stuff, and ultimately built out what I needed, which included also creating some manually calculated columns for some metrics that we didn't quite have but had the ability to build out, which was really cool that we were able to do that, but it originally was not thought that it was going to be available. So this, I know it's really hard to see the data, it's okay. It's just a quick visual explaining the cleaning. Here is an example where I took some data online that I needed for some location data, and it had a bunch of nulls, a bunch of empty columns, and a bunch of stuff that I really just didn't need. So if you look on the right side, that's the cleaned version that I made with what I needed, and then named the sheet what I wanted my table to end up being, and then this got imported into SQL, which served as a source for what we put our visual or connected our visuals to. This is another Excel example where basically I just added some manually calculated tables. Can't really see the stuff, it's okay. Basically, it's just an example of how I added some tables, kind of highlighted that within my work so that I know that those are manually added tables, and added some stuff that I didn't originally have that was really important for what I was looking at. Ultimately, using all of that stuff, we then hired a data hub engineer who had a lot more expertise and was able to take what I had done in Excel, all of that cleaning process, and he was able to duplicate that using Python and automate our process. So now when you download those things, it automatically cleans it, and we still host it in SQL, but our clean and structured apprenticeship data is automatically done, and then this serves as the dev source behind our visuals, which gets to our dashboard, which is in Power BI, which I will hand over to my colleague, Michelle.
So after all that fun process is done, all the cleaning and data prep is done, we connect Power BI to the SQL tables that we created, where it hosts like our clean, usable data. And so that was like our first step. I broke it down in like steps for the dashboard creation. And then we go on to like choosing appropriate visuals and applying consistent formatting. So it's very important. You have a ton of options in Power BI of how you can build your visuals. It's very important to keep in mind your audience. And just choose the type of visual that's gonna make it easier for them to find what they need. And also the consistency with like color schemes and design helps out a lot too on, helping people find what they need more easily. This is like in the screen, you can see an example of one of the pages in the apprenticeship dashboard. One of the goals that the team had was to understand how the apprenticeship program impacted the population in Minnesota throughout the state, like geographically. So we put together the Minnesota map with the count. So the color saturation is the count of apprentices in each county. And if you hover over any of the counties, you can see the exact count and the percentage that that county represents. And some cards too with some numbers that were very important to them, and also some filters that helps like offer some flexibility so they can look at that information in a time frame that they want to, or for a specific apprentice status, or program sponsor. Well, next we go into identifying the relevance KPIs and metric, and build visuals around priority questions. So here is another example of the apprenticeship dashboard. They were also very interested in knowing how like the completion rate worked as well as the cancellation rates work. So we just like chose the type of visual that made that information easily accessible to them. For the next step, we go into validation. That's, there are two steps kind of for that. So we have an internal validation. So every time we build something, we talk within our team. Everybody looks at it, make sure that the data is consistent, like everything adds up properly, we don't have any data errors. And then we send it over to the team that requested the dashboard to make sure that they can use it, that it's easy, that they don't want to add anything. And that's a very fun part of the process because it they always come back with something else. They see the first draft and they're like, oh, you know what would be really cool if we could see this. And then, so it is an iterative process. We send it over to them, they get their ideas, we implement the changes and send it back to them until we get to a final version of the dashboard. And this is just another example of another page we have in our apprenticeship dashboard.
Sorry, it looks like there's a question.
Oh, yeah.
I just had a quick question. So you say you test the usability with users. Do you also have them look at and review the data as well? Since you're pulling in the data from multiple sources, do they check over the data at any point?
More if there is something like really discrepant, right? So if there's something that doesn't make sense, they will check on it, but mostly we do the validation. So like if we see that there are a lot of blanks in one field, we're gonna get back to the data source. So the main data source that we had is a software where like it's manually entered information. So if we're having a lot of missing values or typos or things like that, we get back to the data entry team to work around with them on that, yeah. But for the team that's been using the dashboard, it's mostly like how things look and how easy, what is like the usability is like for them.
Yeah, I would say that also, and they kind of know the data, like some of the basic numbers. So if something looks really off when they're looking at some totals, they're gonna know, and they're gonna be like, hey, that looks kind of weird. But the data that we get is things that they, like Michelle said, manually entered. Mm-hmm. And so they've already seen that. If it's something that we add from outside, we might get their input on it, but they're more looking at kind of the overall totals and overall numbers that we may see here, and they would point out like, hey, that's really weird, something's not right there. And it might be that something isn't right with the data, but it also might be that it's something they just didn't know was a thing, and it pulled it out. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so after the validation and test the usability of the dashboard and get the feedback, when we finally get to a final version of the dashboard, oh, sorry, I skipped ahead in the presentation. So this one here is an example of something that came up after we sent them a first version. So we didn't put an example here of the demographic page because it was just too much information to go public. But we do have a page in the dashboard that breaks down on the demographics, and from there, we noticed that like the percentage of females and like people of color in the apprenticeship program was very like low. So this was a little bit like extra investigation on that demographic part, where we included the workforce proportions in the state of Minnesota broken down by region. So if you look at the like Northwest, for example, I'll go with female, like 46% of the workforce in Minnesota in that region is female, but only like
5.46%.
Oops.
Yeah.
Sorry. Only 5%.
5.46%.
Female,
Pretty
yeah,
sure.
5%, sorry. I have a hard time seeing. About 5% of the apprenticeship is like female, so there is like a very big discrepancy there. So that was a very good finding to help the apprenticeship team bring to the board's attention how maybe we should put some policies in place that is going to support being a little bit more more balanced in gender, and then also people of color. So we do have an incentive for the apprenticeship program that is like it's called LEAP, and it's a grant for women and indigenous people and people of color that supports them. So it's like a money grant for those groups of people to be part of the apprenticeship. So that's part of the work that's being done. Another question or idea that came up from that going back and forth with them during the dashboard creation is we noticed that they wanted to find out what how the apprentices tested compared to people who are not in the apprenticeship program, and that was actually a very good result for them, because we can see that the pass rate for apprentices is higher either overall and on the first attempt. And then after that is done, we go into publishing to a platform. So we have a workspace for apprenticeship, set up permissions. That's a very important. Like, we had to be very careful with the examples that we put here because it's not public information. So we have to make sure that we keep our data secure. That's a very important part of building like any work around data. We offer a lot of training sessions, demos, and are always in touch with the teams that work with. Always available for questions and also to add stuff. Really, a dashboard is never truly finished. We're never done with it, and it's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to grow with the team, with the organization. Priorities change, so the dashboard should change with the team. And we're gonna get into a little bit of challenges.
Yeah. So ultimately, when you have something like this, you're inevitably gonna run into challenges. And we labeled this challenges, but I think going through these, I think it's important to remember that these challenges are actually things that are really important. They're gonna make really big changes. But some of the challenges that we wanted to point out were things like comparable metrics. One of the things that the Department of Labor for the US, the Federal Department of Labor, they have very slightly different ways of calculating some of the things that they look at for their apprenticeship. numbers and their metrics, specifically in relation to like completion rates. And so we figured that out in relation to our state apprenticeship numbers, and making those changes or trying to figure out those things, which is actually what you saw on one of the pages with the Excel sheet, the blue headings. That was in an attempt to match those and create consistency so that you compare it on the same level. So you're not always going to have exactly comparable metrics, and that goes into like data consistency. Not everything is going to be perfect and clean and match exactly. So it takes some work and sometimes a lot of different tries and a lot of time and talking with a lot of people to figure out where, like, how you're going to make everything work together. And that can feel kind of overwhelming sometimes, but those challenges are ultimately going to get you the information and understanding of what you're looking at so that you can actually get things that are going to be able to make a difference. They're going to be they're going to be things that give you actionable insights. And then one of the challenges that I put up here is new team members. As we've been going through the process, as Michelle stated, this is an ongoing process. It's going to continually be going. There's going to always be updates. The data is always getting updated in real time. There's new programs being added all the time. Like, these are things that are constantly changing. There's inevitably also going to be new team members that come in, new stakeholders that come into those teams, and that is more, it's gonna, one, add some time that you have to teach some new people maybe something that they've never seen before and show them that, but there also might, and this is kind of where I say this is a good thing, they might have new inputs. So you might have changes that you need, or we now need to make to the dashboard because they've got an insight that nobody had before, and now we've got a new metric to add. So those are some of the challenges we faced, but again, some good challenges in my opinion. And then they kind of lead up to our next steps.
Yes. So part of the next steps, as Mariah mentioned, we have additional asks, like it's an ongoing process. So we are currently still working on making updates to the dashboard. We have, meetings scheduled already. And that's part of the new, we were a little bit hesitant about putting like new team members in the challenge thing, because sometimes challenge can be like something negative, but in our case, we just wanted to bring things up like challenge is not always negative, In this case, it was a very positive thing. We got some new perspective, and the project is still going. And also, automate data extraction. So Mariah mentioned too that we started the process with the resources we had, with the expertise we had in Excel, did a lot of exploration and cleaning. And then when our data hub engineer came in, everything was automated in Python. And the data extraction is possible to be automated too, but we're still working with the software provider to get access to the API and then make it like fully automated. So that's one of the things that we're currently working on. And that could go into a little bit of the challenges too, because it's always challenging keeping in touch with external stakeholders. So that's something that we have too. But overall, very exciting things coming from this project. And we welcome your questions. Thank you for hanging with us here until like the very end of the conference. And we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, also feel free to take down our email if you have any questions that you think of later.
All right, let's give Michelle and Mariah a round of applause. Thank you. And we do have time for questions. Is there, yep, one in the room?
Hi there. Thanks for your presentation. It was great. I just had a question about like delivering the finalized dashboard to your stakeholders. I know you said that it's an ongoing project and you guys are still working on updates, but I was just curious what your approach or process is to delivering the dashboard to the stakeholders you met with at the beginning.
Yeah. So.
Do you want to talk?
Yeah, sure. So basically, in Power BI, we created a workspace that is, we gave the access to the people, like our different stakeholders, and we can give access to different people as well, but we put the dashboards or the dashboard, however many you have, in there. And then they're basically able to access that workspace and see like the updated dashboards. Anything we do in there would be updated in real time for them to see. I don't know, do you have anything?
Yeah, and we also, there is like the dashboard is always available at their workspace, but we also, we're like, it's an ongoing process. We're always in touch with them. And then when we have like a final version, we get together with them and do a demo. Like the demo is kind of like the delivery of the project, but not really, because like after that, after they've used the dashboard for a while, they are always gonna contact us again to make changes. But yeah, the final deliver would be like publishing to the workspace and then doing a meeting with like a demo.
Yeah, this is a question from online. How do you control for low counts?
For what?
Low counts, low volume?
Well, since a lot of like the dashboard is just like descriptive, we don't do like a lot of testing and inference, at least not for now. That might be for next steps. It's just like they just really want to see what the data is, right? So with low counts is not really a problem for them. Well, it can be a problem if we want to share data externally, right? So like that's the only time that it becomes a problem when like on this type of data, because if you have a low count and a lot of information there, you can identify that person. So we have to be very careful with data privacy. That's like why I mentioned that we had to be careful with the pages of the dashboard that we put in the presentation and like the filters that we use, because if you narrow down too much, you can get privacy compromise. But other than that, in this specific project, we didn't have to handle low counts.
Yeah, I would say they're like most things that we look at, there's a like, is it sample size? I'm thinking like counts and sample size, it's pretty large. I would say if we start looking into like individual programs, sometimes it can get a little bit smaller, which is not something we've really dug into. It's kind of one of those next step areas. And so that's definitely something to think about, and like a lot of thought into like how we're gonna like if there's like is weighing that needs to happen, and that's kind of a huge reason why it's important to make sure that we have those matching, some of those matching metrics, so that maybe we can look at that and compare it on the US like overall scale. But yeah, so far it's not something we've had to really deal with in what we've shown today at least.
Is there another online? Okay.
So with being a part of new department, how did you need to develop new data standards and definition as a part of this project to ensure consistency going forward? How did you tackle such challenges?
Yeah.
As one of the first projects that we worked on, we kind of like, that was that was the project that we set up, like the standard for the design. So we had a few dashboards when we started that like different people made, and they were all over the place. So that was helpful for like, we did develop like the color scheme and the design for the dashboard, so they kind of like, it's standardized throughout our department. But when it comes to the metrics, we they already had definitions for the national level, and that's what we use to standardize for us, for the department, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of documentation that go into those some of those resources that we had to go over in the beginning, and that is a really important part of talking with your stakeholders, because most things, especially being that it's with the government, a lot of things are already there's a standard for it. There's already like there's certain visual standards, certain like word usage that we use, certain things we change based off of like overall standards for your department. So that's why I kind of talked about the importance of understanding both like your own, like the requirements of your own organization, but also your stakeholders that you're making it for. Those are both things you have to consider in like your visuals, the information you include, your language, all of those different types of things. So yeah, all of that was kind of already laid out. We just needed to talk to them and figure out what it was to be able to then put it into the dashboard, which the dashboards we created were new. So it was kind of talking with them and figuring out what we could be unique about and make new since it was new, and what we had to follow specific guidelines.
All right, well, thank you to Mariah and Michelle. Let's give them another big round of applause for their excellent talk.